This near-death experience story is sent by Emily Parker, a 30-year-old woman from Texas who went through something beyond human understanding. It all started as a normal day, but what happened next changed her life forever. Emily wasn't sick, she wasn't expecting anything unusual, but in a blink of an eye, she found herself between life and death. For 3 full minutes, she was clinically gone, and what she saw during that time will leave you speechless. A tunnel of light, a voice calling her name, and a message so powerful that it transformed her forever. Could this be proof of something greater beyond this world? Emily Parker never thought that an ordinary day would turn into a life-altering experience. She was just like any other 30-year-old, managing her work, enjoying time with her family, and making future plans. The morning started peacefully, with the sun shining through her bedroom window as she sipped her coffee, unaware that this would be the last normal moment she would remember for a while. She had no illness, no history of health problems, and yet something unseen was already setting events in motion. That day, she had a busy schedule, but little did she know, she would never make it past the afternoon. As the hours passed, she started feeling slightly dizzy, but she brushed it off, thinking it was just exhaustion. She had been working a lot recently, and stress seemed like the obvious reason. However, as she stood up to grab her phone, an intense wave of weakness hit her. Her vision blurred, her heart started racing, and before she could understand what was happening, her legs gave out. She collapsed onto the floor, gasping for air, her body suddenly unresponsive. Panic set in, but there was no time to call for help. Everything faded into a strange, heavy silence. Her husband, Daniel Carter, was in another room when he heard a thud. Rushing in, he found Emily on the floor, barely conscious. His heart pounded as he tried to wake her, but she wasn't responding. He immediately grabbed his phone and dialed 911, his voice shaking as he explained the situation. Within minutes, the paramedics arrived, but Emily was already slipping away. The last thing she heard before everything went completely dark was the sound of sirens and her husband's desperate voice calling her name. The paramedics worked quickly, checking Emily's vital signs as they loaded her into the ambulance. Her breathing was shallow, her pulse weak, and then, suddenly, it stopped. The beeping on the monitor flatlined, and the team sprang into action, performing CPR while speeding toward the hospital. For most people, this would be the end of their story, but for Emily, it was just the beginning of something far beyond human explanation. As her body lay lifeless, her mind and soul were about to embark on a journey that she never imagined possible. While the medical team fought to bring her back, Emily felt an unexpected calmness. She was no longer in the ambulance. The pain, the fear, it was all gone. Instead, she felt herself floating, weightless, free. She could see the paramedics working on her, see her husband crying in the corner, but she wasn't afraid. There was no confusion, no panic, only peace. It was as if she had stepped outside of time itself, watching everything unfold from a distance, yet feeling completely at ease. The world as she knew it had faded, and something else had taken its place. Back in the physical world, the doctors prepared for the worst. The ambulance arrived at the hospital, and she was immediately rushed into the emergency room. Every second counted. The doctors and nurses surrounded her, working tirelessly to restart her heart. But Emily wasn't aware of any of it. She had already crossed over into something she couldn't explain. What she saw next would change her forever. Emily's body was taken into the ER, surrounded by doctors trying to save her life. Meanwhile, she felt as though she was moving effortlessly through a space that had no walls, no limits. It was neither dark nor bright, but filled with an energy she couldn't describe. She wasn't scared. In fact, she had never felt so calm before. It was as if something was guiding her, pulling her toward a place beyond anything she had ever known. She could still see everything happening below. Her husband pacing outside the ER. The doctors rushing to save her, but it all felt distant, unimportant. Inside the hospital, the staff was doing everything possible. A defibrillator was brought in, and the doctor counted down before sending an electric shock through her chest. Her body jerked, but there was no response. Another attempt. Another jolt. Still, nothing. The nurse checked the clock, every passing second increasing the urgency in the room. But while her body remained still, Emily felt herself moving towards something incredible. She could see a tunnel forming in front of her, not made of walls but of light, stretching endlessly into the distance. A deep warmth surrounded her, like an embrace she had been waiting for all her life. Her husband, Daniel, sat in the waiting room with his hands clasped together, silently praying for a miracle. The doctors refused to give up, continuing CPR, calling out her name. But in that moment, Emily was no longer part of their world. She was being drawn towards something greater, something beyond explanation. What was waiting for her on the other side? She didn't know, but she felt no fear, only love. The hospital room was filled with tension. Every second mattered as the doctors worked tirelessly to revive Emily. Her heart had stopped, and despite their best efforts, there was still no sign of life. The head doctor called for one last attempt. Another shock from the defibrillator. The room held its breath as electricity surged through her body. Silence followed. Then, a sudden gasp. The heart monitor beeped. Emily had returned, but something was different. She wasn't the same person who had collapsed at home. She had seen something that no medical explanation could define. While everyone in the hospital celebrated her revival, Emily struggled to understand what had just happened. She remembered floating, hearing voices, seeing things that shouldn't be possible. But it wasn't a dream. It felt more real than anything she had ever experienced. As she lay on the hospital bed, she could still feel the warmth of the light, still hear the voice calling her name. It wasn't a hallucination, and deep down, she knew it meant something far greater. She had been given a glimpse of something divine, something beyond this life. Her husband rushed to her bedside, tears streaming down his face as he held her hand. The doctors explained how close she had come to not making it, how miraculous it was that she survived without any damage. But Emily wasn't thinking about the medical side of things. She was thinking about the tunnel, the warmth, the voice. She had seen something on the other side, something that left her forever changed. Emily knew she had crossed a boundary between life and something beyond it. She remembered feeling weightless, detached from her body, yet more alive than ever before. She saw the hospital, the doctors, even her own motionless form on the bed. But it all seemed insignificant compared to the presence she felt near her. A voice, kind and gentle, called her name. It wasn't frightening, nor demanding, but filled with love and understanding. She turned toward the source, but all she could see was a golden light stretching endlessly. Her heart was filled with an overwhelming peace she had never known before. It felt like she was home, like this was where she had always belonged. But before she could take another step, something pulled her back. The golden light faded, the voice softened, and suddenly, she was back in the hospital bed, gasping for breath. She had returned, but she would never be the same again. As Emily hovered between two worlds, she saw a tunnel form before her. It wasn't a dark, hollow space, but rather a glowing path made of light so pure and warm that it felt like love itself. The light was unlike anything she had ever seen on Earth. It wasn't just brightness. It was alive, radiating warmth, peace, and something deeper, something divine. The tunnel stretched infinitely, and she felt herself drawn toward it, not by force but by an invitation so gentle yet powerful that it was impossible to resist. There was no fear, no hesitation, only the most profound peace she had ever known. As she moved closer to the tunnel, she noticed that the light wasn't empty. It shimmered as if filled with millions of tiny golden threads, each one pulsating with energy. She felt as if she was being wrapped in a presence beyond human understanding, one that knew every part of her soul yet accepted her fully. Time had no meaning here. Everything just was. For the first time in her life, she felt truly seen, truly safe. There were no worries, no regrets, just a deep sense of belonging. Yet, even as she marveled at the beauty of the tunnel, a part of her knew she had a choice. She could continue forward into this peaceful, welcoming place, or she could turn back. But before she could make a decision, something else happened. Something that changed everything. A voice, soft yet commanding, called her name. It was not just sound, but an energy that vibrated through her very being. She turned toward it, and what she saw next left her in absolute awe. The voice that called Emily's name was unlike anything she had ever heard before. It was not loud or harsh, but filled with an authority that could not be ignored. It was both familiar and unfamiliar, as if she had known it all her life, but was only now truly hearing it for the first time. When she turned toward the source, she saw something that took her breath away. In the midst of the golden light, a figure stood, indistinct at first, but radiating a presence so powerful that she instantly knew this was no ordinary being. The figure did not have a defined face, yet she felt as though it was looking directly at her, seeing her in a way no one ever had before. The love that flowed from it was overwhelming, pure, unconditional, and endless. She felt no judgment, no shame, only the deepest sense of being truly known and truly loved. The voice spoke again, but it wasn't in words as she knew them. It was as if the message was being poured directly into her soul, filling her with an understanding beyond anything earthly language could express. The voice told her that she was not alone, that she had always been guided and protected. It told her that her time was not yet over, that she still had a purpose to fulfill on earth. Emily wanted to stay in this place, to remain in the warmth of that voice forever, but something within her stirred. If she had more to do, if she had a purpose still waiting for her, could she truly walk away from it? The moment she had this thought, everything around her shifted, and she found herself being drawn toward something new. Emily suddenly found herself standing on what looked like a golden pathway, stretching endlessly in both directions. It wasn't made of ordinary stone or dirt. It shimmered with light, pulsating with energy, as if it was alive. The ground beneath her feet felt weightless, yet it held her securely. She looked ahead and saw that the path led toward an even greater light, one so bright that she could barely look at it directly. Something inside her told her that this was a place of incredible significance, a place that held answers she had been searching for all her life. As she took a step forward, she felt an overwhelming sense of peace wash over her. The air was filled with a melody, not a song, not words, but a vibration of harmony that resonated deep within her soul. She felt lighter, freer, as if every burden she had ever carried had been lifted away. The closer she moved toward the light, the more she felt an understanding beyond anything humanly possible. It was as if the very essence of truth was being revealed to her, not in words, but in pure knowing. But just as she was beginning to fully embrace this new reality, something unexpected happened. She felt a gentle force stopping her from going any further. She turned around, and the figure in the light was still there, watching her with love and wisdom. Emily suddenly realized that she was not meant to stay. A deep sadness filled her, but before she could protest, the voice spoke again, this time even softer, yet filled with undeniable authority. "You must return. Your time is not yet over." With those words, everything around her shifted once more, and she felt herself being pulled backward. As Emily was drawn away from the golden pathway, she was given something she never expected, a glimpse of realities beyond her own. She saw flashes of moments from her life, some she had forgotten, others that had yet to happen. It was as if time no longer existed in a straight line, but all at once, showing her the intricate connections between every choice she had ever made. She saw moments of kindness she had given to others, and how they had created ripples far beyond what she had ever imagined. Then, she saw something even more astonishing. Glimpses of people she had never met before, yet she felt a deep connection to them. Some were crying, Some were praying, and somehow, she knew that their lives were tied to hers in ways she could not yet understand. She saw how even the smallest actions could change the course of someone's life. Every choice, every word, every moment mattered more than she had ever realized. It was a revelation so profound that she felt overwhelmed by the responsibility of it. Just as she was trying to understand what it all meant, the images faded, and she was left with one final vision. A message written in light, glowing in the space before her. The words were not in any language she had ever seen, yet she understood them completely. You are loved. Your journey is not over. And with that, she felt herself being pulled back, faster and faster, the golden light fading, the warmth growing distant, until suddenly, she woke up. As Emily was pulled back from the golden pathway, she suddenly saw someone standing in the light. Her heart raced, not in fear, but in overwhelming emotion. It was her grandmother, Margaret, who had passed away when Emily was just a child. She looked exactly as Emily remembered, gentle eyes, a warm smile, and a presence that had always made her feel safe. But unlike before, her grandmother now radiated an unearthly glow, as if she was made of pure light. Margaret reached out her hands, and though Emily didn't feel a physical touch, she felt something even deeper, a wave of love so strong that it filled every part of her being. No words were spoken, yet Emily understood everything. Her grandmother was there to guide her, to let her know that she was not alone. The years of grief and longing for her presence vanished in an instant, replaced by a feeling of peace beyond anything Emily had ever known. Emily wanted to stay with her grandmother, to ask her questions, to understand everything. But Margaret simply smiled, as if she knew exactly what Emily was thinking. Then, with a look of deep understanding, she conveyed a message without speaking. It is not your time. You must go back. Emily felt a pull again, stronger this time. But before she could resist, Margaret gave her one last reassuring look. And then, just like that, she was gone. Just as Emily was about to be fully pulled back into her earthly body, something incredible happened. In a flash, she saw visions of what seemed like future events, scenes that made no sense to her in that moment, yet felt deeply significant. The first vision was of a young girl with brown curls, laughing as she played in a park. Emily felt an immediate connection, as if this child was part of her, yet she had never seen her before. Then, she saw herself standing in front of a large crowd, speaking with passion and purpose. The people in the crowd looked inspired, moved by her words. Emily had never imagined herself as a speaker, yet in this vision, she saw herself sharing something important, something that would change lives. The realization struck her. Was she meant to tell her story? Was this her purpose? The final vision was different. She saw herself much older, sitting by a window, looking out at the world with a sense of contentment and peace. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't lost. She had lived her life fully, with purpose. And then, just like that, the visions disappeared, and the light around her started to fade. She was being pulled back into the world, back into the body that doctors were desperately trying to revive. As the last traces of the golden light faded, Emily heard the voice one final time. It was not just words. It was a truth that was embedded into her very soul. You are loved. Your journey is not over. The message echoed within her, filling her with a deep knowing that would stay with her forever. She felt herself falling, faster and faster, the warmth of the divine presence slipping away. She wanted to hold on to it, to stay in that place of pure peace and love. But the voice had made it clear, she still had something left to do on earth. The overwhelming sense of purpose she felt was unlike anything she had known before. It was no longer just about existing. It was about truly living. Suddenly, everything around her vanished, and she gasped for air. Her eyes shot open, the bright hospital lights blinding her for a moment. The beeping of machines filled her ears. She was back. She had returned to the world, but she was no longer the same person who had left. Something had changed. Well, the doctors and nurses gasped in disbelief as Emily took a deep breath, her body jolting back to life. Just moments ago, they had been preparing for the worst. Now she was awake, fully conscious, and looking around the room with wide eyes. But she wasn't just looking at the doctors. She was seeing everything differently. Her body felt weak, but her mind was sharp, filled with memories of what had just happened. The tunnel, the golden pathway, her grandmother, the voice, all of it was still fresh in her mind. She tried to speak, but her throat was dry. The doctors reassured her, explaining that she had been clinically gone for 3 minutes. 3 minutes, but to Emily, it had felt like an eternity. Her husband, Daniel, rushed into the room, tears in his eyes. He had been told that she might not survive, that even if she did, there could be serious brain damage. But here she was, alive, aware, and more present than ever before. Emily squeezed his hand, and though she couldn't speak yet, she knew what she wanted to say. "I have something to tell you. I saw something incredible." Emily knew she couldn't keep this experience to herself. The more she thought about it, the clearer it became. She had to share her story with the world, not to convince people, but to bring hope, to let them know that life doesn't end when the body does. There was something greater waiting for all of us, and she had seen it with her own eyes. She started by writing down every detail of her experience, making sure she captured every emotion, every vision, every moment exactly as it had happened. Then she began speaking to small groups, sharing her testimony with those who were open to hearing it. People listened in awe, some even crying as they related to her words. Many had lost loved ones and were desperate for reassurance that they were in a better place. Emily's story gave them that hope. As time passed, she was invited to speak on radio shows and podcasts, sharing what she had seen. Some people doubted her, and that was okay. She wasn't here to prove anything, only to share what she had been given. The more she spoke, the more she realized that this was her calling. She wasn't just meant to survive that day. She was meant to come back and help others find peace. Well, Emily's experience didn't just change her, it changed everyone around her. Her husband, Daniel, found a new appreciation for life, realizing how fragile and precious every moment was. Her friends and family, even the skeptical ones, started seeing things differently. The way she spoke, the light in her eyes, it was undeniable that she had been touched by something beyond this world. She also noticed something incredible. She no longer feared death. Before, she had always wondered what would happen when life ended, but now she knew. It wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of something beautiful. This realization filled her with an unshakable peace that stayed with her every single day. Her story spread further than she could have ever imagined. Messages poured in from people who had lost hope, people who were searching for meaning, people who had gone through similar experiences but had been too afraid to talk about them. Emily responded to each one, offering encouragement and reminding them, "You are loved. Your journey is not over." As Emily looked back on everything that had happened, she realized one thing. Her story wasn't just for her. It was for anyone who needed to hear it. She had been given a second chance, a glimpse into something beyond human understanding, and she had come back with a message for the world. No matter what you're going through, no matter how lost or alone you feel, you are never truly alone. There is something greater out there, something beyond this life that is filled with love and peace. You are here for a reason. Your story is not over. She wanted everyone who heard her story to remember one thing. Life is a gift. Every moment matters. Every person you meet, every kind word you speak, every choice you make, it all has meaning. So live with purpose, love without fear, and trust that you are exactly where you are meant to be. Her journey wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. And for everyone listening, she hoped they would carry her message forward. You are loved. Your journey is not over.